اوكي اعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our Ramadan reminders. I'm very happy and very pleased to introduce Dr. Kashif Arshad, who is currently a doctor at it's Northampton, right? Hospital. Am I right?
Leicester.
Is it Leicester? Okay.
Yeah.
You were at Northampton, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
Okay. So at Leicester.
So
yeah. I think Ramadan is affecting my memory, and we can talk about that as well. But Jazakallah khair anyway for joining us. So Kashif, or Dr. Kashif, as they would say, obviously one of the really hot topics about Ramadan is about health in the month of Ramadan, and we get a lot of these conversations, right? This happens a lot with non-Muslims. You know, people are always trying to justify Ramadan from the rational and logical perspective, if they don't really understand like the scripture perspective or the spiritual perspective of this. So I always find that you find people trying to justify why we fast. They'll say things like, we're fasting because we want to know what it feels like for the people who are starving. We fast because, we want to get our bodies healthy. It's almost like the same concept that people try to say Salah is a form of yoga, so exercise. That's why God ordained it to us, right? There are benefits in this. But I just wanted to kind of ask you, right, from a doctor's perspective, from a medical health perspective, generally about Ramadan in itself. Okay, obviously there's so many different areas in terms of the health benefits in this. But let's start with a real, very basic question: is Ramadan actually healthy for us or not?
Yeah. So that's a really good question actually, because as you say, we've got to split this up into two parts. Okay, one is why do we fast during Ramadan, as in what's the actual reason, and then secondly, what's the wisdom behind it. And in Allah Ta'ala's wisdom, in all its infinite bounty, he only makes known to us what he wants to make known, and we have to accept that when he orders us to do something, we do it, irregardless of whether we think it's good for us or not, like a child would to a parent, because ultimately Allah Ta'ala created us and knows what's best for us. But along the way, he has given us a brain, he's given us akal to think and to search the universe around us, and to learn and to understand, and gain wisdom from that, and that's by his permission. So I think when it comes to medical science and science in general, essentially we are observing the world around us and all the things around us that are happening, and what that does is we're trying to interpret the world and the universe and the laws that Allah Ta'ala has given us. Now that doesn't mean we're always right, because and that's the difference, I think, between Muslims and a non-Muslim, an atheist scientist who will form an opinion based on those observations and think that that's it. Whereas we know the ultimate truth lies with Allah Ta'ala. But anyway, so what we do know though is there are benefits to fasting, and we all feel it as well. Some of us more than others. We may not all notice it, but there's definitely stuff going on. So I thought I'll talk a bit about what's going on inside the body, just to give us all a bit of an insight as to what's happening. Especially, nowadays it's become even more popular in the non-Muslim world, when it comes to diets and things like that. You'll all have heard of intermittent fasting. It's a big trend at the moment.
Oh, it's fantastic for guys who do a lot of gym work, right? I mean, this is like, what do they call? They got like, I think it's called ninja fasting, and then they got obviously the intermittent fasting. They got these different ones, right? 17 hours, 20 hours, and so forth. But I think that the key difference here is, And I think people always kind of debate this, right? Whether water, the fact that, okay, you don't eat, but why deprive yourself of water? Surely that must be bad for you, right? I mean, is there some good in this? Because one point I want to mention, Kashif, before you do carry on discussing about what really happens, because I'm really intrigued about what actually happens, and I have some understanding of what happens. Okay, but I want to really hear it from the doctor, from the medic, right? And because that will make a lot of sense. But one of the essence of Islam when it comes to Ramadan is about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that Ramadan is a month where Allah gives the opportunity for the muqayyid, for the muqallid, the people who are following Islam to get closer to Allah, to almost like effectively repair themselves. Now, we as a medic, as a doctor, when we think about the human body, we think about the physical element, the physical entity of a body, right? Doctors aren't generally designed to think about that which they can't see, which they can't touch or smell or taste or anything like that. So the concept of spirit within a body is, like not really a rational point of it. Obviously that's changing now because doctors today, many doctors are Muslims, and they've amalgamated the spiritual world and the reality world to really get a more coherent understanding. From at least from our perspective, agnostic doctors are not going to have that view generally, right? So, but in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us through this where we starve our body and we put our physical entity under so much strain that it lifts the spirit up higher. If you think about every other month, right? We eat, we indulge ourselves in so much rubbish and so forth, and we indulge ourselves in just the entertainments of the world, that we don't give time to our spirit to build up, which is true. This is why so many of us have got so many issues with life and problems and issues and depression and so forth, that we haven't given ourselves the ability to uplift our spirit. But Ramadan is about starving that body in order for the spirit to lift up. And this almost like, I can remember like movies, something on the lines of this, where people starve their body. Other religions, they do this. The Buddhists, they do this. You think about around the world, other religions, other beliefs, and people who don't even believe in God, they do these things to strengthen their spirit, right? But really, what is happening to our body is this, this starvation. Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? What is really going on in our bodies when this happens?
I think you're right, and I think I'll say a bit about what we know happens, and then you'll see that actually what kind of conclusions you can draw, because it's not that straightforward, and that's where the lesson we'll go into it actually. Exactly what you said, I think. All right, very quickly then, I'm going to turn this into like a biology lesson, so just like rush me along, if I get too bogged down in it. But let's split it up into food and water. We'll come back to water. Okay, we'll focus on food first, and all you have to think is, let's just keep it simple. Let's split food into three main things, okay, which is not as in chemical elements, and that's your carbohydrates, your fats, and your protein. Okay, there's other things involved in foods as well, which are like vitamins and things like that. Okay, but let's break it down to those three main things, because they're the three main things that are important for our body. And when we eat regularly, let's say 3 meals a day, what's happening as soon as you eat all that food, and most meals is made up of all of these things. Okay, and obviously some people who are into training and gym are measuring out how much of each of these things they're doing. People like me don't really care and just eating what they can. And but the body is, alhamdulillah, is remarkable at sorting all this out. It's got its own processing going on. Now, the carbohydrates, which come from mainly from sweet things, which are your simple carbohydrates, or your complex carbohydrates, which come from starch, potatoes, rice, pasta, they are basically your fuel source. They're your energy. That's what your cells use. First, it goes into your gut. Your gut then absorbs it, breaks it down into simple sugars, goes into your bloodstream, and then when your blood so you got, that's why you have diabetics check their blood sugar level. That's it. It's hanging around in the blood. If it goes too high, then the excess is stored in the liver. okay? And then the body calls upon that as it's needed. Now, the rest of the sugar is circulating around the bloodstream, supplying every cell in the body, and all those cells are just using it as fuel, okay? That's carbohydrates, okay? Fats, similarly, fats come from, oil, butter, those kinds of things, fat from animals, and essentially it's a different chemical. Again, the body breaks it down, absorbs it into the bloodstream. Excess fat is stored, we all know where. And the whole point of fat, it's used again, mainly it's used as for structures in the body. So, the way cells are built up, if you imagine, the cells are used, fat is used in that construction. It's also used to synthesize things like hormones, chemical messengers. And then finally, you got protein, and protein, the big one that all the gym heads know about, because that's what makes your muscle bulk. But protein is even more simple than that. Protein is the essential. Think of it as the brick. If we are the house, that is the brick. Every single thing in our body is made of protein. It's broken down into amino acids, which is the simplest form of that, and then it's all just restructured together to form different proteins. That's what makes our cells.
So if I had a choice between the three, if I was fasting, which one would I be concentrating on more? I know what I'll be picking, which is protein.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. See, in modern times, especially with most guys who go to the gym a lot, muscle mass is a lot bigger than what naturally would be. If you were just working and doing what you normally do, your muscle mass generally, your muscle mass will just adapt to what is needed. So the whole point while you're lifting weights is you're forcing your your biceps or whatever to work harder. So your body says, oh, you know what, we need stronger muscle there, we need more protein to go there to build more muscle cells because it's working really hard. And that's why it sends the protein there. If you're not using those muscles, it doesn't send it there, right? And then you just pee it out. So you just so ultimately, the honest answer and the honest doctor's answer is going to be it's balance, isn't it? Because you actually need all of these things. Okay, let's see what happens if you don't eat this stuff. So what happens when you fast?
There's a lot of details there, right? About what you can eat and so forth, right? I'm going to try and marry this up a little bit with really the sunnah of Muhammad Sallam. Now, Muhammad Sallam was always in the habit that when he used to eat, okay, and I want you to explain the logic of this to me as well. So for suhoor, for example, he would eat 3 to 5 dates, okay, and a glass of water. Muhammad Sallam wasn't, first of all, he wasn't rich, right? So he didn't have a nice kitchen like Haroon has and, other people. And so the food wasn't, but the sunnah was that would eat 3 and 5. And that was actually the same for iftar as well. Okay. What's the benefit of those dates and that water? And then, and so the pattern was he would eat the 3 dates and the water, and then he would do his salah and then come back to whatever that was there. Okay. And we know that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the hadith very clearly state that for your stomach, that 1/3 should be food, 1/3 should be water, and 1/3 should be left for you to be able to breathe, which is true, right? Because when I heard that, I was like, when you eat somewhere, like, oh, I can't breathe. I used to always, and it's horrible to say, but I remember when I was a young kid, I always pretend I was pregnant because I was like in pain. I thought it was like that, but clearly it is not. I know most mothers are going to kill me now for saying things like that. But so what is the logic? What is the benefit of those dates and the water?
So dates, as a what we'll call it a fruit, isn't it? It's a naturally grown fruit. Essentially, it's very sweet, isn't it? Which means you automatically know it's going to have a lot of carbohydrates in there. Okay, but you see the way the date is formed. Inside, it's like a soft structure, very malleable, and on the outside, it's got this hard skin. And that's the whole purpose of fruit. Why fruit is better than, for example, eating a sweet. Okay, is because what happens is the way Allah Ta'ala has created these fruits, and especially dates, is that the balance in them is not what happens when we artificially make sweet foods, right? So when you eat a date, you could argue that it's got the same sugar content as, for example, eating a load of jelly beans. yeah, halal jelly beans. You could argue it's got the same sugar content. So what's the point? Same calories. You'll say, oh, so what's the point then? Why can't I just eat those instead? Now, don't forget that what the date has got inside it as well is it's going to have some protein in it as well. Okay, and you know that fibrous outside structure, that essentially is fiber, and what that does is when it goes into the stomach, it means that the stomach can't digest it immediately. When a jelly bean goes into the stomach, it's like absorbed in seconds, yeah, rapidly absorbed and broken down, which means you get a spike of sugar in your blood, yeah. So you get and then you get a spike of insulin trying to control that sugar level in your blood, and then it's gone, right? Whereas what a date does and what 3 dates do is they've got to work through your gut much slower because of that skin and that fiber, which is taking its time, which means that that sugar is being absorbed, but at a far slower rate. Okay, but it's still a high concentration of sugar, which is what you need because you've been deprived of sugar all day. Okay, and your body's starving for it, your cells are starving for it. So what are you doing it? You're giving it in a far more controlled manner. Okay, and you're also providing yourself fiber because all that time you haven't been eating, your gut, and you would all know this, your gut stops really working, yeah, because it senses you're not eating. One of the things that stimulates the gut is when it's full. It's not full anymore, and also when you're chewing and swallowing and sending that signal down, then your gut moves. That's why people can get constipated while they're fasting. So what dates are doing is providing fiber, which is going to stay in the gut, which is going to allow you to then go to the loo later and keep regular. Okay, so you can see automatically there's wisdom behind eating the dates. Okay, that aside, obviously we know that dates was the locally grown fruit. It was his favorite food as well, and it's a blessed food as well. So there's going to be other aspects of the date that's going to be matters of the unknown. Yeah, so benefits that Allah Ta'ala is giving us that we don't necessarily know from a chemical point of view why we're getting it, but definitely you can see already that there's ultimate benefits there.
Okay, no. So I mean, I've always wanted to try and understand that, and then obviously, I've always been fascinated about a lot of the talk about, excuse me, that while you're fasting, and what I'm really trying to understand, does your body actually go through some very serious repairing? Right. And I'm talking about gut lining repairing. I'm talking about people have gone as far as saying even cancerous stuff, right? That repairs, all of the cells that effectively, that are causing, the issues that are causing the cancer. It repairs the cells that are getting damaged by that, because one thing I found is like when I'm fasting, and a lot of the other brothers and sisters, when I speak to them, when they fast, for some reason, our brains are much sharper. Our memories are much sharper. You fast in the beginning of the day, you're like, you can work, you're not feeling lethargic or anything like this. But you always find that happens. Why? Why does that happen?
Yeah, it's like a paradox, isn't it? Because again, technically, that shouldn't be the case because you're hungry, and you haven't got enough fuel in your body, or not like what you normally would. So you think you're not fueling the brain. So this is again why it's really interesting, because the brain is one of the highest users of glucose, of sugar, yeah, of carbohydrates. So it's running on energy. It's like a really high energy user. There's a certain scan you can do called a PET scan. If you just PET scan a person, the brain lights up, yeah, and that it just shows it's working super hard, yeah, compared to the rest of the body. That's because all those cells are just firing all the time, yeah, because it's a computer that's on all the time. Now, when you're fasting, what the difference is that your body changes from a mode where it's used to you constantly replenishing your blood levels of these things that we talked about, this fuel, with food, yeah. So because you get hungry, then you eat some food, it goes straight up. So you are basically managing your blood level and the demand that your cells need by eating, yeah. When you fast, what happens, and the first day, why we all get headaches, why we all feel really tired, and why we and almost everyone does, is because the body's sending that signal for you to eat. You're not giving it the answer that it needs, and it hasn't cottoned on yet that food's not coming, right? So it is not trying to get the energy as efficiently from other sources to supply your brain. yeah, which is why you get the headaches. What happens after about day 2 or day 3, which is why now we're, alhamdulillah, a quarter of the way in now, and most of us could probably honestly say, we feel pretty normal. In fact, I always think that, by week 2, you're like out mowing the lawn, going out with the kids, going to the park, as if you're not even fasting anymore. So something's changed,
Yeah,
hasn't it?
that's a really, so that's a really interesting point. Why does that happen, right?
Yeah.
First few days you're struggling, and then all of a sudden it's like you feel even better, as if you were already eating, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what happens is basically is that your body's cottoned on. Obviously it's not thinking like we are, but what's happening is it's stop sending out the signal for you to eat anymore, because it knows that you're not providing it the food, right? Your stomach has shrunk. So because the size of the stomach shrunk, because the stomach's very elastic, yeah. So just as not eating for a couple of days, it just shrinks down in size, yeah, like an elasticated ball. And your body's, what it's done is it's released other hormones to start using other energy, okay? And the main energy source is going to be your fat. And what it does is it uses fat, it breaks that down to form energy. And you hear this term ketosis, which is what people on low carbohydrate diets go on and things like that. And essentially, this is a less efficient way of making energy, which is why the body doesn't favor it when you're giving it lots of food, right? But when it's got no alternative, it will go down this route. Now, the good thing about this route is that although it's less efficient, when I say less efficient, it means you have to eat more, or you have to provide more of the substance to gain the same energy as you would from sugar. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's like, if you burn petrol, it's
Yeah.
in a car, it's super efficient. If you burn firewood, the amount of firewood you'd have to burn to make the same amount of heat is probably like, a ton. Yeah,
Right.
compared to a couple of liters of
Okay.
petrol. So it's far less efficient. That's why we don't burn firewood in our car. Yeah. So it's the same thing, but essentially it goes to that way. And what happens is that provides a much more steady stream of energy. Yeah. Then your usual.
Is this ketosis that you're talking about now?
Yeah. So
Because
ketosis
so just for the viewers, this is phenomenal, because ketosis has become like a massive big thing now for people who are dieting, trying to lose weight, and they talk about how to do it, and really we get into a ketosis mode, right, during the month of Ramadan, and it's a perfect time to really cut that weight, right, to really get yourself healthy. But the problem is, gosh, you just explain it to the people listening as well. You have to push your body into a ketosis stage, right, or mode, right, and you also have to be eating the right food at iftar to get your body to keep burning through that fat cells that you've already got. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. So look, when the diet people talk, and they're talking about getting into ketosis on a low carb diet, they're pushing it to the extreme. So what they're doing is basically say, don't eat any carbs ever, yeah, or extremely low carbs. So what happens is that, do you remember I said that it's a less efficient way? So when your body switches into that, where it's burning fat as its main fuel source and providing a steady stream of energy for your cells, okay, it is ready to flick back to the other way as soon as you start giving it sugar, okay? Which is why when people who are on these diets where they really want to lose weight or want to stay in ketosis, is super strict that they can't eat sugar, okay? We're not fasting necessarily to do that, okay? But as you said, it's happening anyway. It's happening. Now, because when we open our fast, we eat a date. Now, that wouldn't be allowed in those diets, isn't it? Because those diets are even strict against food.
Does that kill the whole ketosis mode?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So rather than what we're doing is more natural, because we're built. What the whole reason is, we are built to live off sugar as well, isn't it? So it always comes down to a balance. Yeah. So being on ketosis all the time is not the only way to be, right? And having some sugars in you can be more efficient as well. So us eating a date will technically take you out of ketosis for time, but because we're fasting every day, our body, I think, gets used to flicking between those mechanisms quite quickly. And certainly, I think the total amount of sugar we consume in a 24-hour period is far less than we would on any other day, right? So in general, the amount of sugar that we've got in our body is less. So it has to rely on fat burning as well.
Okay, great. Listen, I want to. I've been dying to bring up one of these topics, right? Regarding, obviously, fasting is an obligation upon every muqallid, every Muslim, a male and female that's able to do this. And there's great reward on it. And there's great reward on it. And I just want to. I want to just share this one hadith about how important Ramadan is, and you guys will appreciate this. So there was a hadith that was narrated by one of the Sahabi, Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anhu. And this hadith is so beautiful because it really shows the importance of Ramadan in itself. And the reason I want to mention this is because then I'm going to talk about people who are unable to fast. So Talha bin Ubaidullah was mentioning in this hadith that during the time, and this was in one of the stories in the Sirah, that there were two Jews that came to see Muhammad sallam, and they both converted at the same time. So they became Muslim. Now, during that time, obviously being Muslims, their iman was so strong because they were developing Islam. Obviously, in those days, for you to become Muslim was unliked. So for them to change means that there was something that motivated them. So when they did become Muslim, they would continuously compete with each other always and always. Now, one of the Jews, or sorry, I shouldn't say that, one of the converts, he actually went to jihad and he died, and therefore he died as shaheed. A year later, the other convert died, okay, roughly the same sort of period of time. So a year later, in the same sort of month. Talha, he had a dream, and in that dream, he saw three men at the gates of paradise, and he said, when the three men were standing there, then there was a caller from the gates of paradise, and he called upon the man. So think about it. You had the two converts. One, they were continuously competing. One died as a shaheed. A year later, the other one died in a normal death. So the caller from paradise called for the convert who died the later year in a normal death. He called upon him first. Then he called upon the other one that died as shaheed. And then when the caller came out and he saw the third man, who happened to be Talha, who's right, he said, "It's not your time yet." And Talha woke up and he was amazed by this dream. So he went out and he started telling everyone about this dream and started saying, "Look, oh my God, I saw this dream. The two brothers, the two Muslims, I saw them in a dream, and the caller was calling them," and so forth. And so all these Muslims, they went to Muhammad sallam and they said to Muhammad sallam, they said, "Ya Rasul, why is it that the guy, the Muslim who died as shaheed, was called second by paradise, and the convert who died the later year as a normal death, he got called first?" And Muhammad sallam said, "Why are you so confused?" He goes, "Did he not die a year later?" They said, "Yes." He said, "Did he not reach Ramadan?" They said, "Yes." He goes, "Did he not fast?" "Yes." "And did he not pray during the month of Ramadan?" He goes, "Then there's your answer." Which means that Ramadan has so much blessing in it that that dream indicated that the blessing of that Ramadan could be and greater. And therefore, he said in the hadith, he said the reward that he ascertained because of that fasting and the ibadah that he did in that month was the difference between him and the other one was the difference between the earth and the skies. That's a wake-up call for everyone. Look at the power. I didn't even realize this. I didn't realize it. He's comparing to a shaheed. Now the question comes down to, what about people who are unable to fast? And I'm not talking about the old and the people who are medicated. I'm really talking about now people who have eating disorders, people who are anorexic, right? I mean, they will be people who will suffer from anorexia. They will be the first ones who probably don't want to fast. Now, from a doctor's perspective, remember the sanctity of life when it comes to Islam overrides everything. In Sharia, the sanctity of life overrides everything. When you know someone who's anorexic and this is detrimental to their life, they are not permitted to fast. what's the situation here for people like that? You know, people have eating disorder. What actually happens? What is the serious effect and danger for them if they do not fast? So let's start with people who are obviously overweight, and then obviously the ones who are anorexic. Let's go to the one extreme to the other. Your view on that?
So like well, if I start with anorexia, yeah, and the problem with so anorexia is very complex, okay, because it's a psychological condition which is made up of like obsessions and compulsions which go into circles and extremely difficult to break, okay. And if you think of it as a journey or even as a cycle, different people are going to be on different parts of that cycle, and that's going to have a huge effect, like an alcoholic, like a drug addict, like someone who's got other psychological problems like depression. It's not one and all, one shoe fits all, okay. So as you say, sanctity of life trumps everything else. If you have someone who is anorexic and been battling it for a long time and is seeking help, and therefore getting medical intervention. Normally, medical intervention is not that straightforward, but it's a combination effort, yeah, with doctors. And I do think even doctors do a lot. Yeah, it's dietitians, nutritionists, psychologists, psychiatrists. They're all involved to try and help break this chain of thinking. But what happens is, from a medical point of view, what can often happen when people are extremely malnourished is that they need nutrition, and sometimes they get it artificially, yeah, either through a tube or something like that. And once that gets going, okay, that needs to carry on in a safe way. There's something called refeeding syndrome, where if someone like these people, so there's people like this, and I'll tell you about another kind of case as well, who if they haven't eaten for a long time, okay, alcoholics are like this as well, who proper alcoholics who essentially live off alcohol, all day long. They're basically malnourished because all they do is drink. Yeah, so they're lacking loads of specific vitamins, salts, electrolytes, and things like that. And what happens if you start feeding quickly what you think they need? Everything goes out of balance in the body, and it can actually become extremely toxic. So it has to be done slowly and carefully, okay, in order to make sure that and so it's monitored, daily blood tests, things like that. That's just the medical side. That's not going to cure them. That's just going to physically make them
but
feel better.
but Kasha, the question is, right, if somebody was anorexic, right, would they from a medical perspective, would they be recommended to fast?
Yeah, so if they were in that stage, what I'm saying, they can't fast, because if they're in the middle of a refeeding program, stopping that to fast is going to be detriment, and it's proven detriment. So it's not like theoretical, it's proven. So that's Allah Ta'ala's signs, isn't it? If you stop it and you see people start dying, that's God's signs. It's not no one else's signs, and that's what we're seeing.
So what about gosh, what about, let's take the other side, people obese, right, who just keep eating, binge, and they can't stop, right? What's the danger to them, right? I mean, I'm certain there's probably nothing that's probably more psychological for them, right? If you put them up against a month of fasting, what's their challenge? What's the medical challenge for them?
I think is, again, it depends on how extreme we're talking. Yeah. If we're talking obese, but otherwise okay, most of it's going to be psychological, and just stopping eating all of a sudden, it's going to be hard, just like it is for all of us for the first couple of days. But actually, just like people who
because
smoke.
I was thinking about, like, if you're obese and you stop eating, would it have any impact on your heart? Would it have, like, will something happen because you're so used to eating so much?
Yeah.
Could there be?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. So the answer is not directly, but
Yeah.
most likely these people who are that obese are going to have already other problems. They're going to have diabetes. Yeah. They're going to have heart problems because of what they eat. That is itself. So if they stop eating all of a sudden, that's not going to cause an issue with, because they've got fat to burn, right? But they're going to need their medicine. Their insulin levels, their hormone levels are all out of whack, and that's going to get messed up. So that can become dangerous. But those people are going to know who they are, because that's going to be a very extreme condition. And I think most of us haven't really been in contact with people in that extreme condition.
Right. So it's literally a case by case scenario, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
Actually, let me bring to another one, right? This is a big problem for everyone, right? I really don't like those people who burp when I'm in Taraweeh, right? Okay, that just knocks me out, right? For whatever. I can't remember what record I'm on. The question here is about people who binge eat at iftar. Okay,
Yeah.
I already narrated the hadith of Muhammad Sallam, right? And there's obviously wisdom in everything Muhammad Sallam tells us. A third food, third water, and a third. And it's not like a third air, it's actually mentioned a third to allow you to breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, am I right? When you breathe from the lungs, but you can also breathe from the stomach.
You do,
right?
yeah.
So Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters, that's what they train for, right? So when they're fighting and somebody's got their weight on top of you and their lungs compressed and they're not getting the oxygen, they learn to breathe from their stomach.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense now, right? That you breathe from the stomach, right? So the question here is, what happens when you start to binge eat like this? What's the danger to your body?
Yeah. So number one, what's physically happening is your stomach is getting stretched, isn't it? It's spent all day shrinking and then it's getting stretched again. That's like blowing up a balloon and then letting it go down again and blowing it up again and letting it go down again and repeatedly, to the extreme, right? Now I'm not saying your stomach's gonna pop, because that doesn't happen really, you'd have to do a lot to do that, but it's not going to be good for that stomach.
Oh, you can actually pop your stomach.
It's possible, but it's you have to eat a lot.
What's going to happen before death that? Immediately?
No, what will happen before that? You'll vomit before that.
Oh, okay.
So you just, your body will just vomit, won't it? It's not going to allow you to explode it, right? But obviously it's theoretical, it's possible. Okay, but you can see that's not good for the stomach,
right?
And it's going to cause pain. So if you and we've all done it, we've all eaten a bit too much sometimes, and the next day, even when you're keeping your fast, your stomach is hurting.
So Kashif, when do we stop? When do we know now's the time to stop?
Yeah, that's a
right,
good
because that's a good one, right?
Yeah,
because I've heard about you should give your mind, you should give your brain, or so you should stop for it and give your brain to acknowledge for a period of about 10 minutes, and then the brain sends a signal to say you're actually full, right? I mean, there is that relationship.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Which is why by the time you're full, when you feel, oh, I'm full, then about 10 minutes later, you even regret it even more. Yeah, because you're feeling even worse, even though you haven't eaten anymore.
No, okay. So I'm just this is actually to anyone who even knows, right? I'm just trying to figure this out. How do I know I've done a third food, third water, and I've got a third left in my stomach? By the time we realize, we've probably already, by the time the brain's already acknowledged that you're full, we've probably gone past that point, right?
Yeah, that's where you've got to measure out your portions. You know that you've got to look at your plate. We eat all our life, so we know exactly what we eat. We know what makes us full. Some people can eat way more than others in one sitting because we're all built differently, and this is a time, you said this is a time for self-reflection, in fasting, and getting to know your body as well, and being honest with yourself that, look, I can eat that samosa, if I have 3 samosa, I'm going to pay for it the next day, it. So we have to be honest with ourselves, how much you can eat and how much you can't, what mixture you should do of meat, carbs, and protein, and fats, right? And Barney, water as well. I'm sure there's an automatic built-in wisdom of having to pray Maghrib, but why the Prophet insisted on us opening our fast first? Because the Prophet, peace be upon him, could have said, pray Salah and then eat.
Yeah.
But he knows us, right? And Allah Ta'ala knows us better than anyone, and they know exactly what we like, right? That's why, these laws or these commands that get put down on us, there's been great talks about this from everyone, mashallah, in the last few days as well. We talk about the difficulty in praying Salah 5 times a day, the difficulty in, it's always difficult. It's always difficult. Sometimes I think we've got to flip it on its head, and say, you know what, these difficulties are difficult, but with that difficulty actually comes ease, right? That ease is from Allah Ta'ala. When you pray 5 times a day, when you fast during the month of Ramadan and fast, voluntary fast as well, and when you stop doing haram activities, it's hard at the beginning, but it becomes easier. But then what happens after that? What you have to start looking open your eyes, you start seeing the barakah in everything of your life. It's like magic. Yeah, it's not magic because it's from Allah Ta'ala, but it's like magic. If you try to explain it to a non-Muslim, even trying to explain it to a Muslim, you say, look, you don't understand. How many times have I tried to explain to people, just pray 5 times a day and watch what happens to your life? I know you're telling me it's hard, yeah, but actually I'm telling you, you think it's hard, but the net benefit it's going to give you, like when you go to the gym, it's hard, but we all go to the gym, we're all going to go for a jog because we know the benefit's going to be better. And the person who's been going to the gym for 10 years, he's never going to stop. Yeah, he's never going to stop because he's felt those benefits. And the benefits of all of these activities, they're way better than not doing it.
So,
yeah.
So I was thinking about this the other day as well. This hadith that talks about when you're angry, you're mad, you should, perform wudu, or you should lay down, or you should fast, right?
And then,
okay.
Yeah.
And so I think to myself, okay, hang on a minute. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also on another note, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he makes Ramadan very easy for us. And we think to ourselves, hang on a minute, how's that easy? Because you're fasting and so forth. Okay. Easy because the objective behind the fasting isn't that you can starve yourself and lose a whole bunch of weight and look great at the end of it, but it's actually so that you can get closer to Allah and you can build taqwa. But when you start looking at scientifically and medically, if you think about what are those things that hinder us to dig deeper or move to our spirituality or get closer to Allah, it is the word of the dunya. It's our survival instinct, it's our sexual instinct, it's all of these things, right? But it's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us that when you fast, certain chemicals in your body start to go to sleep. So the hadith I talked about that says if you're angry, you should do your wudu, you should, you probably got it's a parking ticket conductor coming to you.
Yeah. Let's ignore it for now.
But what I'm saying is that so when you're angry and you do wudu, or you can't, if that doesn't help, then lay down. If that doesn't help, then fast. This is very highly tied into your testosterone levels, right? So in the month of Ramadan, there is an association between your fasting and the testosterone levels falling down. And that falling down stops this, this like typical, alpha male, sort of character coming out. It brings this humbleness. It makes it easy for you. And I was just thinking how Allah Ta'ala has suppressed this by fasting, and he's made it actually easy for you in this month. So is there a link between the fasting and your and the testosterone levels that occur in a normal male's body?
Yes, there totally is. There's been research done in it. There has been research to suggest that testosterone levels fall, and it would make sense as well because we know, like, for example, eating red meat, eating lots of food, all of that can bolster testosterone levels, and that's associated with aggression. Yeah. Now, testosterone is needed for males. That's what makes us a man. Okay, but you have to learn to control it as well. Yeah, and that's so that's why being a hothead, getting into fights unnecessarily, or always getting into fights or arguments all the time unnecessarily, that's not the way of the Sunnah, right? But some people are built like that. And for them, fasting can be a real way to try and calm that mentality down.
It does, right? It absolutely does, right? It sombers you, right? Literally,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Like you can't be bothered to argue with anyone and so forth. Yeah. And so there is, and I just think this is the beauty of Islam. Look how Allah Ta'ala he designed all of this, right? And therefore, when Allah Ta'ala says, I make it easy for you, these are the ways that he's made it easy for us. Shaitan is locked away. Right, your anger subsided because all the chemical reactions in your body starts to behave very differently in this month because of your fasting.
Yeah,
you don't do that normally.
Exactly. Right? I mean, they say that serotonin levels meant to go up a bit as well. That's a chemical in the brain that's associated with depression when it goes low. Yeah, so antidepressants try to boost your serotonin levels. Now they say that in Ramadan, when they followed up people and they measured their levels, it automatically went up. And that, does that explain why we feel elated or why we feel happy, or is that a consequence of it? Because Allah Ta'ala is making us feel happy and elated, and stronger and more confident.
Well, it's a consequence if you're an agnostic. It is from
Yeah.
Allah because He designed all of it.
Exactly. That's
Right.
it. Exactly. And that's all the difference is, because when they try to interpret it, where it gets to a crux where they can't explain it, they say, oh, that's just natural.
Yeah.
That's just natural. They've just replaced the word Allah with natural. And that's all that's happened, you know. But we know what the truth is. This is all by design. And there is a purpose behind all of this. And that's the benefit of all of this as well. So and you know, I think that when it comes to it, that's where we can change our behaviors, change our patterns as well, and use that momentum after Ramadan, which is the most difficult thing. I think you guys are going to talk about it, inshallah, in the next couple of weeks as well, taking that momentum forward. So this is like a big reset button, isn't it? Both physically, it's a hardship that then physically resets us, mentally resets us, and then spiritually resets us.
That's exactly what the Quran and the ayah of the Quran was talking about, and the hadith we were mentioning, is that it resets you, it prepares you for the next following year, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole complete reset, and that's the key thing. Kashif, Doctor, Jazakallah khair. I'm sorry, you know what, I would love to carry on talking. I had actually quite a few more questions, but we've actually run out of time. Maybe inshallah later on, maybe after Ramadan, we'll get a chance to get together again and go through some more questions. I had a phenomenal question about a conversation you and me had years ago regarding gin and dopium levels. That there was remember there was a conference that was done, right? And that's a phenomenal topic. Maybe inshallah with the order we'll do this topic.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. But Jazakallah khair. I think you need to deal with that parking attendant, right? As soon as you can. Jazakallah for your time. Yeah, may Allah reward you. And thank you for everyone for joining us. And inshallah, we will see everyone tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Right? Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.